Kenya's top prosecutor orders an investigation into the deadly dam tragedy as the search for survivors continues. Open for business. Why experts say Africa's oldest and largest refugee camp is fertile ground for economic growth and investment. And a special Music Time in Africa performance by Congolese super band Jupiter and Okwes. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. The World Health Organization is preparing for the worst-case scenario in Africa's latest Ebola outbreak in the remote Bikoro area of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The WHO says the full extent of the outbreak is not yet known, but the remote location presents significant logistical challenges due to its limited communication and poor transportation infrastructure. The DRC Ministry of Public Health has requested the WHO's support in coordinating the international and non-governmental response to the health crisis. The WHO hopes to deploy an experimental Ebola vaccine to prevent the disease from spreading. The WHO has put 9 neighboring countries on high alert. The WHO is now hoping the United Nations can help it bring in WHO specialists, protective suits and other equipment. There have been about 32 suspected probable or confirmed cases of the deadly disease since April the 4th, including 18 deaths. Kenya's chief prosecutor on Friday ordered police to investigate a ruptured dam on a commercial farm in the Rift Valley that killed dozens of people when a wall of water rumbled down a hillside, obliterating everything in its path. According to the Water Resources Management Authority, which regulates private dams, the Patel Dam did not have the required permits. At least 44 people were killed when the reservoir on the farm, which grew roses for exports to Europe, burst its banks on Wednesday night after heavy rains. Another 40 people have been reported missing. The Public Prosecutor's Office said on Twitter the police chief has been ordered to carry out thorough investigations to establish cause and culpability, if any, behind the disaster and file a report within 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Kenya's government engineers drained water from 2 dams at the Patel farms said to be structurally unsound and a danger to residents of Solai in Nakuru County. Now, Kenya's Red Cross estimates that at least 100 people have also died and thousands displaced in heavy downpours since early April. Floods have blocked major roads across central and northern Kenya and along coastal areas. For more on the Kenyan storm, Samuel Mwangi, Deputy Director of Kenya's Meteorological Department, joins me live by phone from Nairobi. Good evening, Mr. Mwangi.
Good evening to you.
Now, can you help us just explain why Kenya and, in fact, in general, the region is experiencing this cycle of heavy rainfall?
Kenya and indeed Equatorial East Africa has been experiencing quite a bit of heavy rains during this particular long rain season. And this rain started quite early in March. And it's been continuous rainfall throughout the month of March, the month of April. And now for this first part of May, we are still seeing some heavy rains over some areas. This is resulting from the fact that we have the weather generating systems in place, and a slight warmer Indian Ocean than is normal, which is encouraging moisture influx into the Equatorial Eastern Africa region, and a combination of a number of factors. The fact that the almost semi-monthly cycle that propagates from west to east and gives us convection belts that move west to east, has also been in phase for much of this period, producing fairly good heavy rains across much of this region.
Now, the flooding we're seeing, is it because of just the heavy rains, or also because of lack of proper drainage systems, or even certain precautionary measures that could have been taken?
There are, of course, a number of factors. The change in landscape in terms of urbanization. We are seeing very fast urbanization in some of these places. A lot of pavement, tarmac roads, And all this is contributing towards the kind of things we are seeing, particularly in the urban areas. That could be partly due to strained drainage, particularly in the urban areas. You will see this in the big cities and towns like Nairobi. When you go to Mombasa, also similar conditions are also being witnessed. This is as a result of strained drainage from fast urban expansion, and also a lot of informal settlements in some of the areas that are not the best for settling in.
Yeah, indeed, and we've seen, we don't have the images of Nairobi and Mombasa city streets, but what can we expect in the coming months or in the coming weeks to be the case in that particular region, be the urban areas and even the countryside?
Okay, for the seasonal rainfall, we are at the tail end of the season right now, and we foresee that this rain should be reducing over particularly the eastern sector of the country. This includes the Nairobi area. But we expect the rains to continue along the coast, and this should continue to be substantially heavy in the coastal areas of Mombasa, Kwale, Kilifi, and the Lamu towards the north coast. Similarly, we expect heavy rainfall, or rather sustained rainfall over the western parts of the country, including areas of the North Rift. This is Trans Nzoia, Western Gishu, and those areas in the Rift Valley.
Well, Mr. Mwangi, we want to thank you very much for your insight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Samuel Mwangi is Deputy Director of the Kenya Meteorological Department. Now, burden or business opportunity? A new United Nations-backed study on refugees from the World Bank's International Financial Corporation argues for the latter. The IFC researchers examined one of Africa's oldest and largest refugee camps, Kakuma, in northwest Kenya. What they found is a growing consumer base they say is ripe for more private investment in sectors like mobile banking and energy. Viewers Daniel Chef reports.
Refugees run over 2,000 small businesses in the Kakuma camp in northwest Kenya, supplying everything from Wi-Fi to canned food. Many pay some taxes, despite receiving no services from the country, and most incomes in the camp depend on aid.
I came with nothing, so I started my business here in the refugee camp from scratch. I started looking for employment, working for people, and here I am.
The World Bank Group's International Financial Corporation says Kakuma is a vibrant, informal economy and is urging private investors to take advantage of the opportunities.
Yes, the private sector is there to make some money. The private sector in return brings job opportunities for host population and refugees, better delivery of services, more sustainable one in our opinion. That's the IFC experience so far over 60 years. But also brings local economic growth to an area.
The 26-year-old refugee camp and the neighboring town of Kakuma boast a combined $56 million economy, with a total population equal to Kenya's 10th largest city. Benjamin Akale Kwam owns the Kakuma Peana bookstore.
About 70% of our business is from the refugee camp, especially the NGOs around here.
The camp's population more than doubled in the past 5 years. The refugees hail from 18 countries, with the new arrivals primarily from South Sudan.
There has been some questions that have been posed, whether the refugees are simply dependent on the humanitarian aid. The IFC report clearly showed that the economy is well beyond what the humanitarian agencies provide here.
Somali refugee Hassan Mohammed Adan was luckier than most. He was able to borrow money from relatives to start a business. But restrictions prevent refugees from legally owning or renting property, moving freely, and expanding or partnering with a Kenyan.
So we need that documentation. We need also support, because you need money, okay?
While Kenya's restrictions on refugees are unlikely to change, the UNHCR is moving from handouts of food and vouchers to cash allowances, something the IFC says should help attract private investors. Daniel Sheriff, VOA News, Kakuma, Kenya.
Well, Kenya launched its first satellite made by scientists at the University of Nairobi. The $1 million satellite was developed with the support of Sapienza University in Italy and experts from the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. The launch was part of the CuboCube initiative founded in September 2015 by the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs and JAXA in order to improve space technology for developing countries. A viewing attended by the government delegates from relating countries was held at the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, Tsukuba Space Center. The satellite will be used in collecting data on climate change, wildlife mapping, earth mapping, coastline monitoring, transport and logistics. The U.S. government is the largest donor of humanitarian assistance to South Sudan. The assistance is now under review, as according to a White House statement released earlier this week. John Prendergast, founding director of the ENAF project, cautions against cutting aid to those who may need it most. He also calls on the U.S. to use financial tools, both here in the U.S. and abroad, to apply pressure on the warring parties.
The way to do that, I think, is that, the same people who are undermining the peace process, who are repressing civil and human rights in the country, those same people are the ones that are looting the country. They have looted it for a decade now, all of the oil money, all of the other minerals. The treasury has been depleted. The money has been stolen and pushed out in the international financial system, buying real estate, setting up shell companies, going after that money. The U.S. government and other governments can go after that money, freeze it and seize it, and eventually return it to the people of South Sudan. Meanwhile, saying to the government, we're just going to keep it, to the leaders in South Sudan, we're going to keep increasing that pressure until we see an inclusive peace deal be implemented. Not just signing something.
Well, Prendergast warns that until there is real institutional reform and the development of basic state institutions, there won't be peace in South Sudan, even with a peace agreement on the table. The Africa 54 team is always thrilled when you reach out to us on social media to let us know what you think about us and the stories we cover. Yesterday, we reported on the continuing call by the opposition in Ethiopia to lift the country's state of emergency. I interviewed Bekele Gerba, deputy chairman of the Oromo Democratic Congress. Gerba was detained in 2015 in Ethiopia and was released early this year. Your reactions were overwhelming. A lot of our Facebook fans thanks us for having him on the show, while others talked about the situation in Ethiopia. Hussein Dek wrote, the situation in Ethiopia is bad because there is dictator in Ethiopia. Another fan, Milton Elemu, asks, press freedom in Ethiopia, it is a dream beyond reach. Bush Mo wrote on Facebook, Bekele is the Mandela of Ethiopia. It's always very rewarding to get encouraging messages from our viewers. Bariko Mrishot from Tanzania likes our show so much that he wrote, we need this program be translated into Swahili. It will be a very big and good achievement. Bravo. Thank you, Bariko, for watching our show. And thank you for your kind remarks, and please keep them coming. Now, reach out to us on Facebook at VOA Africa 54, and don't forget, we stream our show live every day. Follow me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, coming up, how one woman used her love for woodwork to build a booming business. Stay with us.
Every song has a different meaning to each person that hears it and interprets it differently. Border Crossings is unique in that it lets the listeners decide what we're playing. But we bring in guests so that our audience has access to some of the biggest names in pop music today. And we reach out to the audience each and every day in different ways.
Well, no matter where they live, young people are capable of coming up with fresh ideas about how to improve life in their communities. At a recently held exhibition in the sprawling Zaatari refugee camp in northern Jordan, teenage Syrians showcased inventions geared towards making refugee camps more livable. VOA's George Putic has more.
Life in a refugee camp is hard, with all kinds of shortages, from food and water to energy and transport. Humanitarian organizations do what they can, but resources are often limited. UNICEF partnered with the One Foundation, organizes workshops to teach young people various skills and to promote entrepreneurship. UNICEF Innovation Specialist Robin Louis says they encourage students to look around, identify problems, come up with solutions, and maybe turn them into marketable products.
So, for example, they go into the community and they say, well, there's not enough lighting. They come back to the lab, work with the facilitators, build the lights, go back to the community, test the light with the community. They'll give them feedback and then improve it.
That is how 15-year-old refugee Dina Askar designed a simple and affordable battery lamp.
There is no electricity between 5 p.m. and 3 a.m., but students need light to study. And with many newborns, mothers need light to take care of their babies. The costs of this invention are very cheap.
Sawan Harb, who uses a wheelchair, redesigned a two-wheeled electric bike to improve his mobility. He shared the challenges of his project with visitors.
I asked for help from someone who works in blacksmithing, and I explained to him the new design with 3 wheels to be able to climb on it from a wheelchair.
UNICEF representative Robert Jenkins says this is just the start of a process they hope to expand to other refugee camps in Jordan.
We think it has enormous potential to scale up, and absolutely we are in need of additional funding in order to realize its full potential, which would be scaling up across the kingdom. So youth in all communities would have an opportunity to go through this process and in the end realize their innovative ideas.
For the less tech-savvy in the camp, workshops also covered sewing and decorative crafts. George Putic, VOA News.
Well, Virginia Wallen is a wife, a mother of 3, and a woodworker. She achieved what she has never imagined she would, turning a carpentry hobby into a business. And as Faiza Al-Masri tells us, the entrepreneur isn't just succeeding in her new career. She's tearing down stereotypes and building a new role model. Faith Lapida narrates.
Virginia Wallen, who grew up helping out on her family's farm, developed all the skills required by a professional woodworker early on.
It wasn't so much as a passion growing up, doing woodworking, as much as a requirement, help me, mend fences or work on the farm or do things like that.
Still, carpentry wasn't her first career choice. Wallen worked for 11 years with an IT company.
I was pretty certain that that was my career path for the rest of my life. Like I was going to retire from this company and this job. When I got laid off, I was devastated. I didn't quite know what to do with myself. I was applying for jobs everywhere. I cannot just sit around and do nothing. And I was driving my husband crazy.
Inspired by her dogs, Penny and Chloe, Wallen returned to her hobby and made a crate for them. Then she posted the pictures online.
That week, I had 5 people reach out to me asking if I would build them one.
So she came up with the idea saying, maybe I'll start building these. I thought she was crazy at first, but after the first one and was well received, it was great. I was like, okay, well, if this is going to take off, this is going to take off.
And it did, but that wouldn't have been possible without her husband's help.
So I kind of took over Mr. Mom. I kind of stepped in and, had to be more hands-on with the kids and more hands-on with the school stuff and dinners and stuff like that.
That gave Wallen the time she needed to build her brand, Ginny Bins. Her products are made of recycled wood and have a warm, vintage look. She markets her work online, and that's where Heather Abbott discovered Wallen, as she was in the process of opening a daycare center.
I want something very customized that looked like it would go into a home.
What about the pictures that we have, the art boards that you like so much?
Abbott says Wallen understood what she wanted, from the whimsical to the practical.
One of the things that I really was looking forward to is there's a bookshelf that looks like a tree, and the table for the staff kitchen, because I wanted them to have a nice place. And the angle of the room was weird, so she had to make it small enough to fit in.
Abbott loves each of these items and the message of unlimited possibilities behind them.
That teaches our teachers, our students, our families that pass by through, they know that Virginia made those pieces, and they can say, this is a stereotype that we're breaking down.
For Virginia Wallen, that's woodworking, the work she has fun doing every day. For writer Faiza El-Masri, I'm Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. We'll kickstart your weekend with the sounds of Congolese super band Jupiter and Okwes. We'll be right back.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the World Health Organization says it's preparing for the worst-case scenario in a fresh Ebola outbreak. We stay in the DRC, where UNICEF reports at least 770,000 children under the age of 5 suffer from acute malnutrition. In Kenya, engineers drained a second dam to prevent collapse after a first one in the Rift Valley killed at least 44 people. We stay in Kenya as well, where life is as precarious as ever in the Dadaab refugee camp, 2 years after the government said it would close the camp and repatriate residents. It's the world's largest refugee camp. Finally, in South Africa, at least one person is killed at a mosque near Durban, where 3 armed men with guns and knives slit the throats of 3 worshippers.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Community activists in London are providing free meals and a food-sharing fridge to help low-income residents and reduce food waste. They came up with the idea of starting a people's fridge in a shared workspace for startups, small businesses and social entrepreneurs called Impact Hub Brixton. The People's Fridge is a public fridge where local businesses and residents can leave spare edible food for others. According to the founders, food waste is a big issue in Britain, valued at around $21 billion each year, with restaurants throwing away 900,000 tons of food each year. Well, and finally, it's never easy for children to visit the dentist, but it can be especially challenging if the child suffers from autism. In Chile, therapy dogs are being called to the dentist chair to soothe fears. Zuka is a black therapy Labrador. Her owner started a non-profit organization specifically for autistic children who are often susceptible to shock from bright lights and noisy equipment at dental offices. Only female dogs are used as they are usually calmer. Zuka's owner got the idea when he noticed that his autistic child behavior changed while interacting with the family dog. So far, the feedback has been positive, and the dental clinic has a waiting list. And that's what is trending today. Now, the freedom to wear whatever you want is taken for granted here in the United States, but some people's idea of fashion option is being viewed by others as condoning the repression of women. In a first television interview, a U.S. designer of Muslim clothing explains why she designed her line. Viewers Caroline Presutti has our story.
Lisa Vogel is more than just a few clicks away from her German Catholic roots in central Michigan.
Tell me if I poke you. Okay. I think I only had like 2 Muslims that I know of that I grew up with in my school.
Vogel developed an interest in the Islamic faith through a photography project. She later converted and started designing the clothing she couldn't find in stores.
They don't cater to the religious requirements of a hijabi Muslim.
Vogel started the Verona collection, a modest clothing line that features hijabs in what fashion bloggers describe as colors that pop.
Half of the May production is actually going to be shot this Friday.
She opened a retail store in Florida, but converted it to a warehouse after a major department store took notice. Macy's, yes, one of America's largest, oldest department stores, is carrying Verona on its website.
There's now women that look like me, or dress like me, I should say, being represented on Macy's.
Not everyone agrees with this arrangement. Some point to the women of Syria who burned their hijabs after the defeat of the Islamic State, or the Iranian woman who was jailed after removing hers in public.
Some tweets have demanded a boycott, one suggesting that Macy's is supporting the oppression of women.
Hey, do you want to try it on?
Sure.
Rather than backing down from the controversy, Vogel says she's offering Muslim women a choice.
What's happening overseas has nothing to do with me. It absolutely doesn't. I'm here just offering clothing options.
It's an option that could help Macy's, which closed 100 of its stores in the past 2 years. Globally, consumers spend about $250 billion on Muslim attire. But it's a sensitive topic for women who grew up in Iran, including women's rights activist Parvineh Hosseini.
It is ignorant towards what hijab means in other parts of the world.
Hosseini says the store should take a stance against the enforcement of hijab. Despite repeated attempts, Macy's declined to speak with VOA. Vogel says she has no intention of dropping her clothing line to concede to critics. Instead, she's focused on making Verona a regular staple at more department stores. Carolyn Presutti, VOA News, Orlando, Florida.
We'll leave you now with Jupiter and Okways, a musical group from the Democratic Republic of Congo. They recently performed for Music Time in Africa host and the Maxwell. From all of us in Washington, have a great weekend.
Chiminanga kalomo la kimijala la nyawe. Bonjo, 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 bonjo la ye. Tokoton lokoki patona kenekele la nyawe. Bonjo, 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 bonjo la ye.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A corner is basically an angle where two sides meet.
Boxed in a corner.
Let's find out why these two are talking about corners.
What's wrong? You look worried.
My friend Nico quit his job, had a baby, and bought a new house, all at the same time.
How's that going?
Not good. He's out.